we're going to create the abdomen section for a grass shrimp. I've got a piece of 1-inch tubing, clear, that's about 3/32 inch in diameter. I've got a bundle of boar's hair that I'm going to even up in my stacker. And I'm going to take this boar's hair and thread it through that tubing and then crimp that stuffed tubing with a pair of heated hemostats in order to get the segmentation. I'm taking a little bit of hand sanitizer and I'm coating that boar's hair so it'll help me pull that boar's hair through the tubing. Now I've got a piece of wire, and this wire is orthodontic wire that I got from my kid's orthodontist. And I like it because it's really strong. Now I'm going to take that, I've captured that bundle, and I'm going to thread that wire through the tubing and use it to pull it through. Now, granted, this time I got a little bit too much boar's hair, so I'm just going to use some pliers to start it for me. And it's that first initial bump that's kind of a booger, but with that alcohol, it really does go through pretty easily. See, I've got it through most of the way already. And it's just that last 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, it takes a little bit more. I just like the way, and the reason I got such a thick bundle is so that after I crimp it with the heated hemostats, it still keeps its roundness. See, now I've got it all the way through. Now I can just pull it through with my hand. But I want to take it real easy. The reason being is that wire is strong enough, it'll cut through the hair. Granted, I put too much hair in this bundle. Yeah, there we go. Now take that tubing and push it back up, and I'm going to use I leave probably about a 1/2 inch or so or more. And I like it real rough there. It just gives the impression of a tail, shrimp tail. Now I'm going to take another pair of small hemostats, heat them up, and they're hemostats that don't have any teeth at all, no ridges at all. And I'm going to use it to flatten out the end of the tubing and at the same time splay out those fibers. You can tell it doesn't take very long. You don't need to, you're going to have to get used to how much heat you need to apply to those hemostats. It's better to apply less than more because you can always go back in, heat the hemostats again, and then crimp again, and it'll work. It just adds on to it. But if you overheat it, it'll just melt it completely and it'll disappear on you. See here, I got a nice burn, but nice melt, but I just want a little bit more. And what I actually try to do is to have the tube melt so it flattens out. And see how it flattens out there. Now, on the sides of it, it's a little bit of extra just straight plastic, and I don't like that, so I just trim it off. You can just leave it alone, but it's just something that I do. Now I'm trimming off that boar's hair. I'm leaving just about an 1/8 of an inch. And that's the abdomen. Now I'm going to take another pair of hemostats. Now these hemostats, I have cut out the teeth, and I've got a nice segmentation because of it. And you'll see them. And now I'm heating them up, and you can see the teeth already. And I'm taking the majority of the teeth, but just spaced out, left the teeth in where I want the spacing. So you can see the segmentation. I've heated up the hemostats, and just hold it and crimp. Doesn't take much, it just melts it. But see the effect that you get? And for bigger shrimp, you could leave bigger segments. And that's how you make the abdomen. Continue to tie a grass shrimp. I have a Tiemco 800S in a size 10. And the thread I'm using is UTC white 70 denier. Begin by tying right behind the eye. I'm going to create a little bump there right behind the eye to lift my antenna and work my thread back into the bend. Now I put a little bit of a bend in there just to facilitate it pointing up the shrimp so that it sits more like a jigged hook, and it lays flat. Now taking a bundle of boar's hair, you don't need many, about a dozen or so strands, fibers. Got it in my stacker, and I'm going to stack it in, put it in. Now, right behind the bump is where I'm tying that hair, that stack of hair in, so that it flares upward. I'm going to trim off that bundle. Wrap it down. Now this is just floral fiber. And this is about 60 fibers, a bundle of about 60 fibers. And where that bump is where I'm tying it in so that it also flares up. I actually want that bump because I'm going to use that for my next bundle and help that bump lets it flare up when I tie it in at that point. Oh, don't forget the eyes. I've got a pair of eyes. What it is 50-pound mono that I've melted a bit, and then I've attached a tungsten bead, 3/32 tungsten bead. And I've flattened the end of it to make it easier to tie it in, and so it doesn't roll on me. I'm also letting it splay out because it's going to act as outriggers so that my fly, when it hits the bottom, it doesn't flop to the left or right. At least that's the theory. And tie in the eye on the other side. You just want to nail that baby in there. I take a little bit of clear cure. This is the water type, the really thin, so it soaks into the fibers. I just don't want my eyes coming off. Now, every shrimp I've ever tied's got a little bit of orange or brown in it. And what I do is add a red marker. And it just becomes a hot spot, and it's always worked for me for some reason. And so that's why I add that there. Once again, I'm using UV resin just to make sure it doesn't disappear on me. I'm going to take another bundle of floral fiber, and see, I tied it in right. I use that bump to help flare my legs. A little bit of UV resin. And now another bundle of floral fiber. Now I'm going to attempt to whip finish this down. I get caught up a little bit, but it's not that big a deal. I just trim it away, and I know I've got it nailed down. This is just extra insurance. Even with these really over the arm on this UV on this whip finisher is really long, I still manage to catch a little bit of the floral fiber. And trim away that thread that got caught in there. Now I've just got some rubber legs, and what I'm using this for is to also aid in the fly as outriggers, so that the fly doesn't flop over. A good friend of mine by the name of Glenn Ueda suggested this, or at least thinking about putting something out there that helps the fly from not flopping over. And this is my solution. What's nice is the rubber is pearl colored, so it works really well. You don't need much. And once again, I use that bump to make the rubber legs flare out. Most of that will be trimmed off at the end, you'll see. Now I'm going to take that abdomen that I created earlier and tie it in now. See that little nub? That helps me tie it in. I'm just wrapping it down. Now I'm going to coat all of this with UV resin so it'll nail down, but it also gives it some visual interest underneath because it gets all captured and of course it's transparent. Trim away my thread. Now I'm just going to do a little trimming and UV resin work. I do tie in the thread again though. I want that tail to stand straight up. This is just UV resin. Now I'm going to add a little goober, a large goober of UV resin. And that's to create more of the, well, I guess in freshwater flies, the thorax area or the body section. Just because I know it's a little bit thicker there. And cure the resin. Now, depending on how you fish these things, you could leave it just like that. But I'm planning on setting up this fly so that it can be fished off the bottom and twitched. So what I'm doing is I am creating the fly so that it stands up and that the tail stands up. Now I'm tying my thread at the bend, and I'm going to use it to tie down the abdomen of the shrimp so it stands up. Hit a whip finish. And as extra insurance, I'm going to add a little bit of UV resin. Hit it with the light. Now, I use this light just to bench cure my UV resin. And then I have one of those nails, like for women's nails, and I'll tuck this thing in there for 2 minutes, and it'll completely harden the UV resin. Now I'm just resetting the hook so I can get better access to the legs. And I'm just trimming away, just so it looks more like a shrimp. And that's my grass shrimp.